Hey there, it's Cassie. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I have part one of a two-part series that I call Let's Make 8, and this one features the September 2018 Simon Says Stamp kit called Sea Treasure. So before we go ahead and get started on making cards, let's take a look at what's inside the kit. To start off, we have one jar of Simon Says Stamp Mermaid Ultrafine Embossing Powder, and inside the package we of course have some candy. Have to have the candy. And then we have a Simon Says Stamp Embossing and Watermark ink pad. We also have the Tim Holtz Tumbled Glass and Stormy Sky Distress Oxide ink pads, full pads, very nice. The Simon Says Stamp Treasure Chest sequins. We have metallic lavender and a metallic white envelope. They're so pretty. We also have the Simon Says Stamp 6x6 Aqua Glitter Paper and the 6x8-inch Beautiful Mermaid stamp set with so many great sentiments and beautiful images. We also have an idea sheet. And then we have the 8.5 by 11 or close to 8.5 by 11 sheet of Tonic Deep Sea Dive Luxury Embossed Paper, and then one sheet of Neenah Classic Crest 80-pound Solar White cardstock. So my first card is actually going to be fairly simple, but with the elements that I'm going to be using, it'll pack quite a punch. So I have a piece of, I cut the Neenah cardstock that came in the kit in half, and so that was 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and then I scored that in half at 5 1/2 inches, and so it's a top folding A2 size card. And now I'm trimming some of that aqua glitter paper down, probably about 1.5 inches is what I cut. Roughly about 1.5 inches, and then I trim that down to 5 1/2 inches because I'm going to adhere that directly to the card base. I have another piece of cardstock. This is Express It cardstock. I have said before that that is actually my favorite for Copic coloring. I know everybody has their preferences, but this is something that I like, and so I am going to do some embossing. And so I'm using the watermark ink that came in the kit from Simon Says Stamp, and I am using the ultrafine embossing powder as well. And I have to tell you, I was very skeptical before I started using it because it has glitter in it. And my experience with glitter in embossing powders is that it isn't very fine. But I will tell you, this embossing powder is amazing. It is not something I would have bought myself, but I'm so glad that I got it in a kit because I love it. Oh my gosh, I was trying to find all kinds of ways to use it because when they say ultrafine, they mean it. So now I'm just stamping using Lawn Fawn's jet black ink, using the starfish all over the side of that piece of cardstock. And I can't remember what I trimmed that down to, but it is not obviously a full-size panel. And then I'm just coloring those starfish using Y15, I believe. And then I'm going back in with shadowing with YR12. And then I'm going over the top of that with my Nuvo glitter gloss just to give some pizzazz to those starfish. And then one of them didn't stamp completely, so I used my micropore pen to finish out the image. And now, like I said before, I'll adhere that piece of glitter cardstock directly to my card base. And I used just a Tombow adhesive. And then I'm going to use some Fun Foam on the back of my other panel. It's an inexpensive way to add some dimension because, you know, Fun Foam. If you have kids, you probably have Fun Foam. My kids are older and I still have Fun Foam. And then I'm just adhering that all over the back using that same Tombow adhesive. And then I'm actually going to use some some tacky glue to adhere that Fun Foam to my card base. And once I have that put down, that'll actually finish off this first card. And I mean, like I said, very simple, but it does pack a punch. And I love how this one turned out. For card number 2, I'm going to build a scene. And so I'm using that last little bit of the cardstock that came in the kit, and I'm folding that scoring that at 5 1/2 inches to make it a top folding A2 size card. And then I also have some of the Tonic Deep Sea Dive Luxury Embossed Paper, and I have trimmed that down to make it look like some waves. I'm using the Simon Says Stamp Clouds for Days stencil, and I am also using the, that is called the Tumble Glass. I don't know why I was having a brain burp there. So I'm using the Tumble Glass Distress ink and a mini ink blending tool to put some clouds across that sky. fun, subtle, easy way to do it. And it's nice because I didn't have any of the new distress inks yet. So now I have two, and I can slowly add those to my collection, which is nice. So just building those clouds, and then when I'm done, I'll set that off to the side. I'm stamping my Little Mermaid partially, just part of the mermaid, onto some Express It cardstock using some Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink. And now I am going to color very fast. I know some of you really like to see the coloring, so I've sped this up 4 times. And I have the colors listed on the screen, and I'm not doing anything real fancy or crazy. But her skin tone was E02 and E04, and now for her hair, I'm in the C family, which is the warm, or not warm, but it's the cool color family of the darks. And I'm going to color her hair to make it look black. I have just added some, I'm feathering that out. I haven't colored hair in a while, so I'm kind of rusty at it, but I do enjoy doing it because you can really get some fun looks with highlights and texture, and the mermaid's hair in this set is really fun to do that with. So I'll end up doing that some more with other ones, and just kind of evening that out, and then I will move on to her seashells once I'm done with the C family. For her seashells, I am using V06 and V09. And then for the conch and her starfish, I am using Y15 and YR12, colors that I used previously on the starfish for the first card. And then I'm using YG63 and YG67 for that other little piece in her hair. And so I will fussy cut her out off screen. And my goal here is to make it look like she's coming out of the water. So I will have to do a little manipulation and kind of trim her down. I want her hair to look like it's setting on top of the waves and that she is coming out of the waves. So I've trimmed it a little bit, and that way I can kind of set some of her behind and some of her on top. And then I will set that off to the side so that I can work on the sentiment. For the sentiment, I am going to be doing the same thing I did on the first card. I'm using the embossing ink from Simon Says Stamp that came in the kit along with one of the sentiments, and then I'm going to use that amazing embossing powder over the top. And this has a lot of little detail in that sentiment, but that embossing powder worked so nicely. I'm just using a Tombow adhesive to adhere my waves. And I'll use that same adhesive on her. I don't want to have any dimension on this card too much because I feel like that could possibly take away from the waves a little bit. So I'm just going to stick her behind, adhere my sentiment with the tacky glue because that embossed paper does have a bit of texture. And then off screen I had colored and cut out 3 of the small images from the set using some of those same colors that I had already used, so there was a little bit of cohesion. And once all of that is down, I've decided that she's a little too far in the middle. You know, for visual sake, I wanted her to be off to the side a little bit more. So I peel her back. Thankfully, she wasn't too stuck. And then I just move her down a little bit. And then I will try and rub off some of that glue. And then that'll finish off card number 2. For card number 3, I'm going to start off with some fog cardstock that I already have cut down to 4 1/4 by 11 inches, and I'm scoring that at 5 1/2 inches. And this is the fog cardstock from Simon Says Stamp. And so I'm just going to do a lot of embossing. Like I said before, I was super impressed with this embossing powder that came in the kit, and I wanted to just test it a little bit further and see how it would do with some of these images, because I knew it did beautifully with the sentiments, so I figured it would probably work beautifully with the images as well. So I'm using my embossing buddy on the background there and using that same watermark ink or embossing ink, and I'm just going to stamp some of the images, the mermaid images, all over the background. And as you can see, it actually does a really good job of the watermark look as well. But I covered that with the embossing powder, and then I'm going to heat set that with my heat tool, let that melt just till it melts, and then I will continue on with my random stamping. I sort of have some rhyme and reason to how I'm stamping these, but not a lot. And so I'll use my embossing buddy once again to make sure that no powder sticks where I don't want it to. Stamp the image down, cover that in embossing powder, and then I will use my next image. Stamp that, Cover that with embossing powder, and then I'll heat set that off screen. And once I have that done, I'm going to fill in some of those gaps with the tails, and I'm just going to randomly stamp a little bit around just to fill in those gaps just a little bit. And then I will cover those with that embossing powder once again. And this stuff is just so pretty. It has that beautiful glittery sheen to it. And you'll see, because I'm going to do some more with that embossing powder as well. And then I'll heat set those. So I've taken a scrap piece of Neenah cardstock, and I'm covering that with the embossing ink, and then I'm going to cover that with the embossing powder. And I'll do this a couple times because the coverage wasn't great the first go round, and you could kind of see the lines. But I'll melt that, and then I will let that cool. And once it's cooled down a little bit, I will cover that again with that embossing ink, and then once again cover that with the embossing powder. And I'll leave in this melting because you can really see it, and it's just so pretty. I'm holding that down with just a tool, one of those little pick tools, and then I am just heating that over the top. And you can see it melting, so pretty. And as you can see, look at that shine. So I'm going to use some dies. That's why I've done such a big piece of paper. I'm going to use the Simon Says Stamp Nested Hearts wafer dies. Just one of the dies in there. It's not the smallest, and it's certainly not the biggest. There's a lot of dies in this set. And I'm going to run that through my Sizzix Sidekick. And then I will also just take another scrap of that Neenah cardstock, and I'm going to use the Simon Says Stamp Wonky Hearts. This is the smallest one of that. And I'm going to run that through my Sizzix Sidekick as well. I love this little die. So cute. I got it on super sale one time. That's why it's always a good idea to keep an eye on Simon Says Stamp's sale section. And I'm going to stamp the sentiment onto here that says, oh, what does it say? I think it's Mermaid at Heart. And the little heart is a shell. So cute. And I'll cover that with the embossing powder a couple times just to make sure it's covered. And I'm using my reverse tweezers. If you don't have a set of these babies are awesome because right now it's saving my fingers from getting burned by the heat tool. And I'm going to start adhering those things to my card. I thought about using some craft tacky glue, but then I thought, well, let's use some foam tape because there isn't a lot to this card. It's actually a very simple card, as you can tell. It just deals with all embossing and a few dies. And then I will cover those with the foam tape. And I'm going to do it slightly off center. There's that big gap there, and I thought, well, it doesn't always have to be centered. So my heart is a little off center, more to the right there. And then I will cover the Mermaid at Heart piece with some foam tape as well. Take off the backing paper and center that. And then for a little final bit of embellishment, I'm going to be using those sequins that came in the kit, and those are the treasure chest sequins. They're really pretty. Some of them are flat, some of them are a little bit domed. They all have holes in them, but they're really, really pretty. And I've just scattered those around, and I'm using my crystal katana along with some tacky glue just to get those adhered. And once I'm done there, that finishes off card number 3. For card number 4, I'm going to pull out my alcohol inks. I'm using some Yupo paper, and I have just put some alcohol blending solution all over the front of that Yupo paper, and that is 5x7 Yupo paper. And I'm using the colors Mermaid, Aquamarine, Denim, and Cool Perry. I just grabbed some that I thought would be kind of fun, and I'm just squirting those all over that Yupo paper, and I am moving that around with my air compressor and my Copic airbrush adapter. And then I'm going to add more, and then I'm going to move that around some more with the air adapter. And then I'm just kind of peppering it on there. That's one of the things I found. If you want smaller dabs, you just kind of pepper it around. And one of the things I really do enjoy about these alcohol inks is that you're going to get something different every time. Doesn't matter, you're just going to. It would be very hard to duplicate any sort of background, exactly. So that's one of the things I find so fun about these alcohol inks. So I'll add a little bit more solution, and then I'll pepper some more of that ink on there. I'm using the denim, which is the darkest of the inks that I have, and just because I wanted to bring in a little bit more. And that air compressor really kind of pushes those around. It kind of made me feel like it was possibly some like coral reef in there. And I'm going to set that off to the side to dry. And now I've got some Express It cardstock inside my Mini Misty, and I am inking up the images that I want to use with some Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, both very Copic friendly. And then I'll stamp that out a couple of different times, just to make sure that I have a good impression. And then when I'm done with that, I'm going to heat set that because that ink has a tendency to stay wet a little bit longer. So I've sped up my coloring about 4 times. I clearly don't color this fast, otherwise I'd have a lot more time on my hands these days. But I put all the colors up on the screen, and this is there because I know that there are some people that really do like to see the coloring, so I thought I would just leave it in. I'll just keep it at a faster pace. And I'm just going back over that, just adding shadowing where I think it would be. No real rhyme or reason to how I'm doing it. And the skin tone I'm using is the same that I've done with all of them. It's my go-to, basically. It's E02 and E04. Back when I was really doing a lot more coloring with Copics, I experimented with the different skin tones, and it was a lot of fun. And I'll get back into it one of these days, but right now I'm just kind of doing my go-to. Hair isn't real easy for me, but I am, I'm trying to add some shadowing, and you do that with some feathering. So I'm feathering those colors, and I'm just using 2 colors. I thought that would be easier at this point, but I know there are some folks that they tend to use a lot of different colors. But I only wanted to use the 2. I wanted there's going to be a lot going on with this background with all the coloring, and all of that background is very vibrant, obviously, with the alcohol inks. So I would say I didn't want to get too detailed, but clearly I got pretty detailed with all of my different images. And sorry that one's off screen, but it's the same colors, and you'll see. And I'm not going to show you all of the coloring because I didn't get it all on there. And so I end up just cutting it out because I figured, you get the gist. I'm using all the same colors that I have with the other images that I have colored for the other cards. So there's really nothing new here, and the coloring is quite simple. And so once I'm done with this one, I'll move on to using my Nuvo Glitter Gloss pen over her fin and her shell and her beads up in her hair, and then I use a white gel pen just for the dot in her eye. For the sentiment, I am stamping onto some black cardstock that I have in my stash, using my embossing buddy over the top of that, and I'm using that Simon Says Stamp Embossing ink. I will stamp that out and then cover that with the Simon Says Stamp Ultra Fine White Embossing Powder. And then I have another sentiment that I want for the inside that I will stamp on the other side, because I'm going to trim those down just using a paper trimmer after I'm done stamping, covering those with the powder, and then melting that with my heat tool. So then I've trimmed all those out, and I've fussy cut all of my images. Now it's time to start assembling my card. And I'm going to use the Tombow tape runner on my alcohol inked background. I just love how that ended up turning out. And I trimmed down my 5x7 paper just so that paper would be slightly smaller than a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So basically it is a 4" by 5 1/4 background for that paper. And then I'm going to start putting all of my elements onto it as well. And I'm just using that tape runner for my sentiment. And then I'm going to put a little bit on the inside because I had some left over. I save all that. That Yupa paper is pricey, so I'm going to save all of my background with it that I do. And so I've used the tape runner to put those down and the sentiment on the inside as well. And that says, I'm pretty sure your birthstone is a seashell, or a seashell. So for the rest of my images, I will use, the inside I'm going to use some tacky glue just to make sure those stay down. And then I'm using foam tape for all of my outside images. And there really wasn't any more need, in my opinion, to add any extra embellishments. There is plenty of color going on, lots to look at. It is, in my opinion, a very visually appealing card with all of the different colors. And I'm just going to start stacking those on there. And there's a turtle and a seahorse and then one more fish that I stick on there. And once I'm done with that, that will finish off this card. And that's card number 4. So let's go ahead and take a look at these first 4 cards in this series. Part 2 will be coming shortly. If you liked these cards, I would love it if you hit the like button. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And go ahead and leave a comment down below about which one of these was your favorite. I always love hearing that. And thanks, guys, for stopping by.